Fossil-free steel. You have all heard about it. And you have all heard about, most probably, that hydrogen is the solution to reach fossil-free steel. But is it enough? And is it true? To reach 100% fossil-free, no. Then you need carbon atoms. And those carbon atoms need to come from the biomass, as we see it today. I will tell you in this presentation more about the steel industry transformation regarding this, how a big-scale production capacity of biocarbon needs to be built in order to meet this demand, and how we at Envigas will contribute to this development. Let's start. No? The Swedish iron and steel industry accounts for more than 10%, exactly I think it's 13-14% of all carbon emissions in the country. If you take the industrial output, it's around 40% of the industry's CO2 emissions, using millions of tons of fossil coal annually. This can be replaced by hydrogen together with biocarbon to make 100% fossil-free steel. But you also need to change the technology. Because if you stay with the old blast furnace technology, it will not happen because you can't change the total need of fossil coal with biocarbon in the blast furnace, maybe up to 20%. So biocarbon is the enabler for 100% fossil-free steel. And Swedish biocarbon produced from forest residues can replace the imported fossil coal. And Envigas, through our high-temperature pyrolysis process, can do this and produce this biocarbon in combination with other value-added streams coming from the process. Some words about the steel production in European Union in order to put us in the right perspective. As you see in this slide, we are in Sweden and Finland together counting for approximately 7-8% of the steel production in Europe, which makes us relatively small in a European perspective. But if you look at the iron ore deliveries from Sweden, we count for 80%. And if you know the ambitions with hybrid, for instance, a lot of the development in this transformation will happen out in the Nordic countries, which makes this extremely interesting. No? In 2022, around 9 million tons of steel is expected to be produced. And there are huge investments planned. If you take the existing steel industry, 65 billion of investments are planned in order to produce fossil-free steel. This is in the existing structure. And if you look at the need of biocarbon for this, if you want to make it 100% fossil-free, all of it, you have a minimum requirement of 350,000 tons of biocarbon. If you add to this the plans that H2 Green Steel has, that you have on the bottom of this slide, you see that they aim to produce 5 million tons of steel, and they will invest something in the region of 25 billion for this. And then the need for biocarbon will increase even more. So you see, it's a huge industry that needs to be built up for this. Some words about the raw material and some fundamentals in this that is important to understand, because sometimes these discussions go wrong about what we should use the forest for and so on, especially in these days. If you look at the left of this picture, you see a tree. The bottom of the tree is used basically for sawn timber. The mid of the tree is used for pulpwood to produce pulp and paper. The top of the tree is normally used for energy purposes, producing bioenergy. If you look at the details of the bottom part of this, the sawn timber, you can see on the right side of the slide, you see how you cut the logs in the sawmill, and there you can see that you get approximately 50% of the tree you get as planks and boards, and you get approximately 10% of what you put in as sawdust. And the sawdust that goes to the top of this cycle for the bioenergy, for instance, for producing pellets and so on. And then you also produce wood chips from the sawmill that can be added into the pulp and paper part. If you listen to the debate sometimes today, the same people who want to keep the trees in the forest, they also say that we should build more from wood, because that is a good carbon sink. And it's better than steel and concrete. But this is like in the slaughterhouse. You can't just take out the fillet. So if you want to build in wood, you will also get the other parts of the tree, because you can't just take down the bottom part. And this is often missed in this. And the point in this slide is that there is, since many years, a good utilization of the tree usage, I would say. But this needs to be refined even more. And if you take the top part here, which also consists, as said, of residues from the bottom part of the tree, the bioenergy part also needs to be, I would say, more transformed into biorefineries, where you also take out valuable materials and products out of this. You don't just make energy out of it. And that's the whole key of this, to utilize the tree and each part of the tree in the best way. We as Envigas, we are the first Nordic large-scale producer of biocarbon. We have an experienced team I will come back to. We are privately owned by founders, financial and industrial investors, and employees. We have approximately invested 200 million into the processes and facilities we have today. And we have owners, among others, Consejo Invest, Bayer Ventures, Filian, and Imran Capital, among the biggest. Our concept is to build, own, and operate our plants. And we are replacing fossil alternatives with fossil input with renewable alternatives. We have a plant in Skellefteå I will come back to, and we have a plan for scaling up. And we're also working with value-added streams out of these processes, which I also will come back to. We have a committed and experienced team as we see it to execute this. All is about people at the end. On top you see the key team to execute the steps we have in front of us, consisting of a big variety of origins, you could say, or nationalities. and a relatively high educational background. We have 4 PhDs in relevant areas for what we're doing, and the rest is also master and bachelor science level. So the average level is good, but also combined with good and relevant experience in the areas where we're working, both what we're doing, but also the applications at customer site. We have a board of directors that is also very experienced from industrial background, financing background, developing companies, and so. We have representatives here if you want to talk during lunch or breaks with the chairman P.O. Vedin. And we have Martin Gemvik and Tobias Brink here as well, who are working with the business development mainly. This is our Swiss knife. That's the production process and the technology we use. The core of this is the pyrolysis process, where you heat up without adding oxygen. You heat up the biomass from 20 degrees to 600 degrees. This is a core of the process. Whatever you have around it, you always have that. Here we have illustrated that we start with wet biomass. You can start with dry biomass. So on the left-hand side you have the heater. Out of the biomass you produce a solid phase, the biocarbon. Approximately 25% of the material put in you get out as biocarbon, approximately 40% of the energy content. The rest goes with a gas. Today, in our factory in Skellefteå, we produce bio-oil, pyrolysis oil, which can be used as a raw material for fuel production. But you could also use it for, in the simplest way, for heat purposes, but you could also use it for electricity generation, the energy content of the gas. But then, as you see in the right-hand bottom part here, you can also treat the gas and refine it and split it, so to say, to take out the essential values of it, which is hydrogen, it's CO2, you could produce methane. But in this, we are working more on an R&D scale, and we have some steps to be taken before we are fully there, but the opportunities are there. So it's a bit where you establish and how you want to build it, how you utilize this Swiss knife. Our large-scale proof of concept facility in Skellefteå, where we established in 2017 a test plant, which we have been using in order to learn technology, but also to qualify the products at the customer, which is an intensive work because no one has done this in this scale before. And it has been a lot of development going on together with the customers for the last years in order to qualify the products before scaling up. We have also installed our full-scale production plant in operations in some time. That has a capacity of 5,000 tons per year. So it's big in a historical scale, but small in a future scale. For this, we have a plan of how to scale up in order to be relevant for the customer needs. And this is a little bit how to deploy the Swiss knife. This map illustrates not firm places which is decided to establish at, but it's for you to illustrate for you and for you to kind of see the combinations needed in order to get efficient processes. Because you need to take into consideration logistics and where you are if you have raw material, but you also have to find locations where you can make an efficient process and utilize existing infrastructures that, for instance, to take care of the heat, because you will have a lot of excess heat from this process, and it's an advantage if you can utilize that in an existing system. You might find a place where you have an existing turbine, for instance, a boiler. Your capex goes down, but you might need to do it together with someone. So it's these kind of concepts you need to find, and also develop how to utilize the Swiss knife in the specific localization. And these are three examples. If you establish, for instance, in the Örebro region, you have a lot of pellet mills, and you also have pulp and paper mills, you have CHP plants, and so on that you could utilize. If you establish in Luleå or Boden, it's quite clear you have customers close, and those customers might also need the gas in order for their process to work. So that could be an interesting combination together with the biocarbon, which makes this biocombinate very profitable. In Norrköping, for instance, you have a lot of pulp and paper industry, which makes it interesting. What I didn't mention also, which is interesting to take into consideration in this map when we talk about using the tree and the wood, is that we can also use recycled wood. So basically, we could also use the planks when they have been used in a house for 70 years. So that's an additional opportunity. And that you have to take into consideration also when choosing your place, because the recycled wood is most probably where people are and where you have residual or recycled wood. The expansion could potentially take place in 3 steps. We could potentially have a first plant in operation in 2025. That would be a plant based on, as simple as possible, I would say, technology based on that the simpler, the easier to get it up in scale, because it's a huge scaling that needs to take place. The next plant, we could go for a more maybe refined also solutions and upgraded solutions for the gas and so. And on the third one, even more. And then I think we could also extract more values by then out of the biocarbon streams, also on the path to, for instance, graphite and similar products. So, as a summary, and what I have tried to tell you, biocarbon is an enabler and a necessity for 100% fossil-free steel production. The Nordic addressable market is around 350,000 tons in 2026, and that has a value of approximately 2.8 billion SEK, and a rapid expansion of biocarbon production capacity is needed to meet this demand. Envigas plans to scale up with relevant capacity of biocarbon production in combination with value-added products to meet other needs in combination with this. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Lars-Gunnar. You talked earlier on in the panel about the scarcity of biomass, and there was talk about that there is no scarcity. But in terms of streams of materials, waste streams, for instance, you mentioned the recycled wood. What do you foresee in terms of being able to increase the supply of biomaterials that would enhance your production?
I think you have a big potential in utilizing the recycled material. You also, like we're working with in our test plant to test new raw materials, I think there will be a future in agricultural residues, for instance. So there will be new streams, but there is R&D needed for it. But otherwise, I think it's about using the sources we have smarter. If you take, for instance, now we have the sawdust where we produce wood pellets. That's a way of densifying and making it more, so to say, transportable and so. And then you use that to burn it. If you instead use it to produce biocarbon, and then you take care of this residual heat, you get much more value out of that, and you can still utilize the heat. Okay, in the heat balance you might need to put in some more pellets, but it's a much smarter utilization of the material that we already have.
So there is room for improvement here.
Yeah.
Competition. Would you like to mention anything about what if you have competitors?
I think it would be excellent if we had more competitors, because what is needed in this huge scale-up that we are seeing is that you need to get, I mean, everybody needs redundancy in terms of suppliers, and that goes for all parts of this chain. So the more competition and the more actors in this, the more relevant it will become to develop and refine technologies for the scale up and so in all steps. So I think we need as much different solutions as possible.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Lars-Gunnar Almryd, and best of luck. Thank you.